Greetings for the day, ladies and gentlemen. I welcome you to today's webinar to behalf of SoftwareSuggest, Mercer Mettl, and Dots and Arrow Consulting. My name is Jolisha Rathore, and I am your moderator throughout this session. Whether you have joined from the comfort of your home, office, or anywhere around the world, we are delighted to have you here. Before we delve deep into the subject matter, here is a quick fact for you all. As per research, by 2030, 85% of the jobs will be difficult to fill due to a lack of applicants with the skills to take up these jobs, resulting in $8.5 trillion of revenue left on the table. We are in 2023, and there's never been a better time to address this challenge. With AI and generative AI tools like ChatGPT posing a serious threat to many jobs now and in the future, it would help to understand and learn those skills that are irreplaceable no matter what. To touch upon the current workforce and the skilling challenges and to explain the importance of a skill first strategy, we have two esteemed speakers in our panel in today's webinar. First, Ms. Deepti Namjoshi. She is Vice President and Consulting Head of Psychometric Assessment at Mercer Mettl. She has actively conceptualized and implemented competency assessment and development intervention for various organizations across industry. She is a psychology professional with over 15 years of work experience. Second, we have Mr. Dipan Vaishnav. He is an HR professional and ICF certified executive coach, specialized in using NLP, EI, and neuroscience. Over the last 31 years, he has worked with and impacted Fortune 500 companies and 1 lakh people, trained over 30,000 hours, logged over 20,000 sales calls, and personally coached over 400 clients. To all the great minds joining us today, please feel free to type your questions in the chat box, and we will be pleased to answer all your questions towards the end of the webinar. Now, I hand over this webinar to Mr. Deepti to take it forward with the current workforce challenge.
Great. Thank you, Jolisha, for that lovely introduction. Thank you for those kind words. And good evening, all of you, ladies and gentlemen, and friends who are here. Happy to connect. I'm sure we're going to have some fun time, interesting insights, as you will discover as we go along. Some data points, and between Deepti and I, we try and simplify things for you. As Jolisha already spoke about and alluded to, the fact is that these are some of the workforce challenges of today, right? We are facing all kinds of challenges, and I'm sure some of you on the webinar today are experiencing some of these. Some of us know what to do about it. Some of us are still struggling, even identifying what exactly is caused. In fact, some time back, there was a Mercer report, the Mercer CEO and CFO study of executive response to the current business climate. And it showed that while the CEOs are thinking of labor market challenges, climate change impact on the business and cybersecurity concerns, it is the CFO, and I'm sure the other CXOs, who are worried about the safety of the people in a pandemic environment and about persistent inflation. So you see, the challenges are pretty common, what is presented and what is common across. As the world changes, as we are getting into newer ways of working, there is a different way of working nowadays. A lot of talk is about how with the generations, the style has changed, the needs have changed, the expectations have changed. But the fact also is that the social fabric is undergoing change. There are inequities rather, unrest, and any change will bring about an unrest. Good or bad, we would like to assume it is all for the good, and only time will tell us, provided we are able to ride this effectively and we are able to guide it to the direction that is required and which is beneficial for all of us. In fact, there was also this, and many of you would have seen the World Economic Forum report, which was published recently, and it showed that because of these changes in the entire ecosystem around us, almost half of the workers' skills will be disrupted in the next 5 years. I mean, you can imagine, Jolesha was talking about 2030 and how it's going to be in the balance 7 years. It's going to be even more. In fact, the World Economic Forum report also goes on to talk about the top 10 skills which are on the rise. And I'll try and recollect some of these: creative thinking, systems thinking, analytical thinking, technological literacy, resilience, talent management, to name a few. Now, it's good to know that these 10 skills are on the rise. And, in our uh, coffee table conversations or social conversations, we often talk about these skills. We often talk about AI, and we often talk about how things are going to change. There are plenty of WhatsApp forwards, in various languages. This is not going to work, that is going to work, you need to change. What we need to really address is, what is it that we are doing about it? What are the tools that are available? What are the challenges in adapting these? What are the challenges? What should we do about this? What are the various things? Both we as the business owners, whether in India, globally, wherever we are from, in terms of providing and enabling that environment for the people, the surround climate, and we as employees, in terms of what are we doing to you know understand these challenges and ensure that we are properly enabled or capable as the times change, as the things change, as we go on. And with that, I'd like to invite Deepti to talk more about all of these diversity and many more things that she has to share. Deepti, over to you.
Thanks a lot, Dipan, and thanks, Julesia, for making the introduction and opening up the conversation. So Dipan has actually covered it all very well. It comes from his wealth of experience and the kind of knowledge he has. So, interestingly, yesterday, I was listening to a podcast, which has become quite popular among the youth these days, and I consider myself one of the youth. So there, it was regarding geopolitics, and a German diplomat was actually talking about how Germany overcame the aftermaths of World War II. And despite struggling for nearly 5 years, between 1945 to 1950, on almost all the fronts, how they grew into becoming one of the largest or one of the thriving economies of the world. So there, there were a lot of things that he spoke about, that, between those 5 years, people didn't have food, people didn't have money. There were other people coming from different countries. So in your neighborhood, you will have complete strangers. So there were challenges with respect to, adjusting with different kind of circumstances. And from there, of course, there were many other factors, like there were countries like United States helping them come out of that situation. But one of the key factors that the person spoke about was Germany's focus on education, not just in terms of formal education, but educating people across various spheres of the society, and that too with respect to specific skills that they can leverage on in order to regrow themselves, rebuild themselves, and earn money, have a good life, and so on. So even today, for that matter, there are engineering schools, there are technology schools, there are business schools in Germany. But even today, there is a large focus on building skills in a very systematic and structured manner, in a way that can be applied on the job. So people find it easier to apply and not just learn it theoretically. And that is one of the biggest strengths he mentioned that Germany had, due to which Germany could come out of that situation quite well. They were able to re-establish themselves, and today they are the fourth largest economy in the world. So, the moral of the story, and, why I narrated this whole incident, is that basically skills and reskilling, upskilling, having skill-based workforce strategies is something which is not new to us. We all theoretically knew it. Many of us tried to practically apply it. Maybe post-pandemic, the relevance of skilling, the relevance of skill-based workforce grew higher. And the kind of skills also, evolved naturally. Earlier, we only used to talk about computer fundamentals, electronics, telecommunication, accounts, finance, etc. Today, we talk about AI, machine learning, data science, data analytics. So the nature of skills has evolved. It is going to evolve a lot. So from all of this, basically what we are trying to do is that now we are, as organizations and as individuals, we are trying to focus more on what is going to be relevant for the future and how we can build the entire ecosystem in the same fashion. And that's where now, if you look at these are some of the points coming from Mercer's Global Talent Trends report, which talk about all of this. That I spoke about it, improving the employee experience for retention. Now, Deepan mentioned about how newer generations have different set of expectations. All of us know that, unlike the previous generations, nowadays people are not happy and content doing the same job, staying with the same organization for their lifetime. So this is something that we already know. But there is a little more to it. Basically, people have now expectations around having higher cross-functional mobility, having different kind of roles to perform. A lot of people you must have seen, they go for non-linear career paths. Many people, even after 40, 45 years of age, they have a drastic career shift. They start from scratch and start doing something altogether different from what they have learned and done over the past few years. So that is the kind of environment all of us have been dealing with. And that's where, first and foremost thing for everyone is to start with, at the level of education, but not just at the level of education. So there is a need for industry academia collaboration as well. So, in terms of education now, people need to understand how to build a more skilled workforce. I don't know how many of you have read today's Economic Times. There is a report published by Mercer Mettl on graduate skill index, and that actually talks about how many of today's graduates are actually job ready. And there is a very interesting statistics around the same. So if you get a chance, you can actually download the report and see that. Broadly, it says that 45% of today's graduates are ready with the skills as per industry requirement. So I don't know whether you would say that only 45% are ready, or you would take it positively. It's everyone's outlook at the end of the day. But basically, that means that education needs to evolve, and it doesn't end there. So, apart from hiring skilled workforce, organizations also need to kind of focus on building the existing workforce on the right set of skills. A lot of roles are getting redundant, so slowly transitioning their workforce from the redundant roles to more futuristic new age roles is going to be the organization's responsibility, because that's going to be one of their retention strategies for their employees. So that's one thing which is going to be very important. Employees also need to understand what are the organization wide expectations, or what is the industry expectation, because in the World Economic Forum itself, there is a very interesting fact mentioned that there is a gap between what employees or individuals go for, in terms of learning and development, and what organizations expect them to do. So individuals go more for technical skills enhancement and development, whereas organizations are looking for some of the non-technical skills and competencies that Dipan mentioned, like resilience and engagement and service orientation and analytical thinking, etc. So that gap needs to be filled, and that is where I think all of you will be able to resonate with all the points around improving the employee experience, having a systematic workforce planning where you decide how much you want to buy from outside and how much talent you want to build within the existing workforce and how you want to go about it. So that's where the next point of designing your processes around skills, investing into reskilling, upskilling, redesigning the work patterns such that you improve agility within the workforce and you enable them, basically those who are agile, those who want to have that mobility, enable them to take up roles. And that's where, a lot of clients, and Deepan, you would agree with me that a lot of organizations these days do ask us whether there is a way through which they can go for assessing employees proximity index for various kinds of functions and roles, and how they can then encourage cross-functional movements. That's where we are today. These are some of the skills that Deepan already mentioned. You will see a lot of literature available around the same. World Economic Forum report, almost everyone has read now. But there is a lot of literature available around how some of the non-technical skills are also important. Critical thinking, for that matter. Many cognitive abilities, critical thinking. I'm so sorry. Analytical problem solving or creative thinking, intellectual curiosity, and an openness to learn, agility, adaptability, leadership, very important. And then apart from that, you have some of the hygiene factors like focus on quality, resource management, time management, overall execution excellence, and so on. So these are some of the skills which we have also found to be very critical, and organizations do assign importance to the same. In the report also it mentions the same. So from here, we actually want to have a poll. So I would request Julicia to actually put up a poll here. There is a small question for all of you, for all the attendees today. You will be able to see the options. It's a 1-minute poll. You can go for whichever one you find more relevant, and we can take it forward from there.
I have launched the poll.
Thank you, Julicia.
So, Deepti, may I have permission to add something here?
Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you. And when you spoke about everything was self-explanatory, and one thing also was, but I want to just highlight that when you speak about employee experience, and for the benefit of all here, I would like to draw out a different paradigm here, that in the context of retaining employees and reskilling them, that idea of retention really starts at the time of the employee joining the company, because the experience starts there. If that experience is not good, not when I say not good, from a point of view of the people who are joining this workforce, and that's the Gen Z, right? If
Yeah.
it's not up to their expectations, a part of them has disconnected already. And so they are only half-heartedly joining that particular organization. So the stickiness is going to be adversely affected right at the beginning. And I think that is something that all of us must consider when we talk about retaining. It's not that 1 year done, how do we retain? It's too late.
Yeah, true. Yeah, so we have the poll results out. Very interestingly, there are mixed results. So I would basically tell you what it is. The question was, what are your top talent development priorities in 2023? As expected, there is a significant percentage of people who have gone for technology adoption and building a future-ready workforce. Significantly high percentage for encouraging reskilling and upskilling and cross-functional mobility. 4% have gone for developing a sustainable leadership and succession pipeline. To me, it looks natural right now, more than building the leadership capabilities. The focus is more on building the right set of skills, both in terms of technical and non-technical, but there is a higher focus on technical skills across organizations that we can sense here also. So technology adoption naturally comes up first, but basically reskilling, upskilling, and cross-functional mobility, as we were discussing, comes out to be the topmost area of priority. And that's where, Deepan, what do you think? You have discussed with so many as a coach, in the capacity of coach as well as assessors, you've had individual interactions and have had interactions with clients also. What is your take on this?
Yeah, and I see this, from my point of view, as a service provider in this area, that more and more organizations are thinking in this direction, which is a good sign. That people are realizing, and to quote Marshall Goldsmith here, that what got you here is not going to take you there. So they are investing into this area, and which is a good sign. So I would encourage more and more people to do it. Of course, side effect is they'll also get more business, but
absolutely. And yeah, so basically, a lot of points we discussed from employees' point of view as well as from organizational point of view, what is being considered to be critical. And that's where, the entire employee life cycle comes into picture, whereas Deepan mentioned, it all starts at the level of recruitment itself. It's not just about, identifying the skills required for your existing population and then assessing them and then taking them through some developmental plan and doing it as a tick mark activity. It's not just all about that, but it's more about conceptualizing this whole exercise, according to me. And that starts right at the recruitment level. And even before that, basically, recruitment, existing people's development, reskilling, upskilling are various stages. But what exactly are you going to, build them on? What are you going to develop them on? That's something which needs to be decided in a very systematic manner. And that's where all of us do invest a lot of time with our clients. We do conduct visionary interviews, systematic sensing exercises with the functional heads, business unit heads, other relevant stakeholders, to understand what it takes, what are the success ingredients of the organization. See, ultimately, every industry has certain key success factors which have to be there in everybody who is working in that industry. There may be country specific elements, there may be organization specific elements. All of this needs to be digged deeper through such sensing exercises, by having those conversations and understanding what exactly worked in the past, what have been some of the significant achievements of the organization in the past, and what is it that they are set out for in future. And then accordingly, what kind of success factors do they see in their, or do they expect in their current and future workforce. So that's where there is a lot of investment of time has to be done by the organizations to first identify the framework of success factors, and then that needs to be deployed in something called as an integrated talent management, which starts from your recruitment to your existing workforce. And that's where, on the screen, you will be able to see there is a mention of a lot of tools like personality and behavioral tools, or functional skill-based tools, cognitive ability tools. We spoke about it a lot. There can be assessment development centers. So, for example, in a hiring scenario where you don't really have people who with a high span of attention, and there you would want to quickly gauge their level of potential or capabilities. So that's where you actually go for a battery of assessment, and where you might want to use some functional skill-based competency assessments or personality assessments or cognitive abilities. Whereas for your existing workforce, maybe you would want to have a combination of more comprehensive tools. And, that is where then, assessment development centers or more comprehensive solutions come into picture. Now, there is a point that Deepan would also agree with. Till few years back, we used to conduct assessment development centers traditionally in a very completely physical mode. And I remember when I was on the other side of the table and I had reached out to a consultant for conducting assessment development centers for my organization, that person said that we do conduct 5-day assessment centers. So contact me only when you're ready to go for that. Otherwise, there is no point in having any further discussion. So those are the kind of conversations until, few years back we used to have. And from there, today we are at a stage where organizations still want to invest. They still want to take a serious effort in evaluation of their workforce. But at the same time, they want to make their workforce comfortable in taking the assessment. Employees want to invest in their own development. At the same time, they want the flexibility and ease of doing these assessments. So they do want to have an assessor interaction. They do want to take some online assessments and understand where they are and where they need to be. But at the same time, they want to do it maybe in a in a remote setup, virtually from their own places, and so on. So both organizations and employees these days, there is a significant percentage of them asking for a solution where they would have both the assessor interventions also, and something which can be completely conducted in a virtual mode. Post pandemic, this became quite prominent, but I think that's going to be the future, and that's where we are. So from that, now, we are into a space where virtual assessment centers, blended assessment development centers has become the key. And there, I think, I can ask Deepan to add a little more, because he has an experience of, being an assessor as well as a coach. So he has seen the entire assessment as well as developmental journey of various participants. So Deepan, if you could share your thoughts on, some of your experiences.
Yeah, and you rightly alluded, that how things have changed. I remember my, when I was on the other side, and also when I was on this side in like 10, 11 years ago, we would do a traditional assessment center, and how, it has significantly changed. Now, from, of course, an assessor point of view, it has changed significantly, but more than that, right now in our context, from a participant point of view, I see that the participants are gaining a lot more insights, because now there is much more time that is available to talk. There is a deeper insights because of a hybrid and a blended kind of an approach, where they are able to use online tools and also assessor insights. There's a possibility to dive much deeper into what the person really feels like. Uh, the fact that, post the assessment, now there is also ample time that post the assessments are done, there is a debrief and a discussion about, what do you do with this report, what does it really mean. Just reading a report, for a lack of a better term, a layman or a participant, it is mumbo jumbo, right? But now there is ample time, because a lot has gone, on system based and quicker and much more finer, because of the platforms and the tools that are available. There is time and people do want to dive deeper into, okay, what does this really mean? Uh, there is discussion now about, uh, I don't think so, or what do I do with it? How do I make a plan? And then they kind of want to take it forward, and then the whole thing really continues. So I see a lot more acceptance, a lot more possibilities that the companies are, more and more organizations are getting into using these tools, and a lot of them, wants to get into it. Of course, there are some who say, we still don't understand, but that's a journey. When the fact that we don't understand is another way of saying, okay, I want to know more, and that's a good sign. So I see more and more organizations across sectors, wanting to do it, and plenty of people are benefiting out of this.
Yeah. One more interesting point, and I would probably want you to throw some light on that as well, Deepan, is the point of diversity and inclusion. And that's becoming the talk of the town since last few years. And organizations, basically have understood the need for having a more diverse workforce, and making them feel included and being involved in decisions, etc. So where do you think we are at this stage in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Thank you for reminding of my favorite topic. Thank you. Deepti. So I think, where we are is, I would say we are on that journey. at an intent level, most organizations have got it right. But at an execution level, I think it is still more about, we have to hire more women. That's not what the really, DEI is all about. So I think that that is still there. At this point, I'm reminded of something that one of my previous employers, and I've seen many others, have this program where they encourage women to take up assignments even after their, say, a longer maternity leave or certain domestic or social responsibilities that they fulfill. They want to come back to working. So more and more organizations, though there are very few now, even now, who recognize that if a woman, as an example, okay, I mean, that diversity means many more things. But as an example, if the woman has gone off being on the workforce for certain reason, that doesn't mean she has forgotten her skills or her capability has gone down in any way. They recognize that there is a talent, there is certain capabilities that she brings on the table, and let us see, how best we can match. While there's these are the companies who also, when the people come back from, another example I'm giving, come back from a maternity leave, there is a match to a role available, right? In many organizations where this is not at an intent level even very true, she has come back from a maternity leave and now she's trying to figure out what to do, because the job has been taken by somebody else. Now she has to find for another role, and nobody really bothers to bring about that match. And you know so we care is not only about maternity leave as per the guidelines. We care is also about, is it at your intent level, is it in everything that you do, are we really ensuring that when we make decisions, there is no bias against any category, women or any other categories of diversity. It has to be inclusive, merit based, and then we kind of integrate it all. I can go on talking about, but you need to tell me when to stop. We need
No,
to
you can share your thoughts.
we
No
need
worries.
to as organizations, I think we need to examine not just the policies, what is so I work with many medium to large organizations, and many of them, what is required as per law, let's do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that means that somebody is forcing them to do it. But I think we owe it as there's a lot of social change that we need to bring about. It has to start in all directions. You can't say that it starts somewhere and we pick it up from. And corporations or companies or organizations are a part of that social fabric. So we need to be able to examine everything that we do, our mindsets, our behaviors, our policies, our processes, uh, small comments that we make, informal settings, how do we behave into those? And then it's the leadership who will have to really drive this. Even today, I'm talking about a multi-billion-dollar company. ये लड़कियों से नहीं होगा. It is not a woman's job. Now, in an open meeting, if somebody says this, that the DEI on the board on the walls has absolutely no meaning.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it's a journey. The good thing is many organizations are working in the right direction, but there is still a lot to do. And all of us, 70 of us on the call right now, I think even if we commit to bring about that change at the social level, we will be able to make a big difference. And that will help, retaining, reskilling, because the skill is there. We need to harness that potential that is available in a diverse group, to bring them on board. And I think organizations can only benefit out of that.
Absolutely. No, not at all. This was very helpful, Deepan. Quite, to the point. And basically, the point that we are driving here is that It shouldn't be done just as a tick mark activity, but it has to be ingrained in the organizational overall mindset. And that's where, on screen also, if you see, one of the assessments mentioned is about inclusive leadership assessment. So though the name is inclusive leadership, it's not just all about leaders, but overall for any individual, whether you have that inclusive mindset and whether you have inclination towards, you know, uh, getting more and more diverse people along with you and making them feel included, and so on. So that's the kind of philosophy that we are trying to drive from there also. And in fact, this particular aspect is applicable everywhere. These days, organizations don't just want to assess individual potential, but they also want to assess various touch points. So from a cultural point of view, is there a alignment between the employee and the organization, whether the person is culturally aligned with the organizational philosophy or not, and not just the role fit, but cultural fit has also become very important. Understanding developmental needs is one thing, but understanding motivators, what are the individual drivers, and how the organization can align themselves with the employee expectations is also something which is which organizations are finding to be quite important these days. And then of course you have things like checking readiness with respect to the new age competencies, and that's where then we have things like evaluating learning agility, evaluating digital readiness, leadership potential, managerial potential, and many other things. So we have already spoken about the kind of things organizations are going for. From there we come to the last leg of our conversation.
And to talk about all these various things that we talk about, fortunately, like you just mentioned in the previous slide, there are these tools available. So all that the organization need to do is just go to the right place, identify the right tool, and you have a diagnostic ready. So I think half the job is done right here.
Absolutely. So this is something that I don't have to really reiterate. This is something all of us know. How it all starts from identifying the business objectives for the next 3 to 5 years, aligning the success framework of the organization to the business objectives, evaluating people, basically potential hires as well as existing workforce, identifying their developmental needs and building the right set of capabilities, leveraging that data to basically build a succession pipeline within the organization, and then recalibrate the framework from time to time to stay relevant. Basically, every 3 to 5 years, it's important for everyone to revisit what you have identified to be critical for yourself. And is there a need to change or modify or tweak that at some point in time, is something which has to be done by both individuals as well as the organizations. And that's where your overall journey of reskilling for relevance will actually make a lot of sense for everyone. So that's where we are. And that's where we can probably end today's conversation. But now we will have Q&A. So I would like to ask everyone to post their questions, and we will probably take it one by one. So the first question is here: using Mercer Mettl, how can we measure the impact of reskilling on employee retention rates? Very interesting. Maybe I can take that up, and Dipan, you can add. This is something which we have come across a lot of times, with our clients, where they say that we hire the right set of people, we assess them, we know that their track record is good, but they don't stay with the organization. So what do we do with that? And that's where the entire approach of retention comes into picture. It's not just about the assessment. Organizations ask us whether through our assessments we'll be able to predict who will stay longer with the organization and also perform well and have the highest level of productivity. But then that is where it is our job to kind of make them understand that it's not just all about assessments, but it's also about identifying what really went wrong. Where is the gap? why is it that employees who have high productivity, who have been having high good track record are leaving? What are the gaps between their expectations and what the organization is providing? So there is a need to look into the exit data, conduct some sort of a pulse survey with your existing workforce to understand what exactly they are expecting. That's one point of data that you can go for. You can obviously assess them on the relevant skills to check the potential part, the capability part anyway. But then there is a constant need to revisit the performance data, the tenure, various other things, employee expectations, and kind of check the correlation between the same, do some data crunching to see what kind of trends coming out, what profile of people is leaving, or what is it that making them leave the organization. So that's an end-to-end approach that we suggest to our clients, and that's where a lot of assessments that we saw on screen, we do deploy those assessments, but there is this whole diagnostic approach that we recommend the organizations to go for, which is of course a time-consuming activity, but it's very important for them to do that so that they get to the core of the problem and they try to resolve the same.
Yeah, also, if I may add,
Yeah.
to the person who asked this question, to give a very one-line simple answer, I don't think there is a direct correlation that we can bring about. We assessed, we reskilled, and therefore retained. Because retention, as we also spoke about a short while ago, is a function of multiple things that happen in the company. We can have a measurement that if we did this activity, did we achieve the expected outcomes in terms of diagnosis or behavior change, right?
Yeah.
But retention will have multiple things that will impact that.
Absolutely. So retention is a very sensitive topic. I would say there are a lot of external factors attached to it, as Deepan mentioned. It is not just related to the employee and their potential and whether they are able to adjust well in the organization, but it's also about what the organization is doing in order to retain them, how organization is trying to engage them. And that's where I think the next question, there is a question in the chat that I can see. How do we imbibe sense of accountability and ownership in Gen Z who are more transactional in nature? So again, I think here I can add, and Deepan, you can add your bit to it. I would say that, I'm not saying that we are being judgmental here, but maybe there is a gap in understanding Gen Z's expectations also. The other day when Deepan and I were having a casual conversation, he just mentioned that it's very interesting to talk to the newer generations and Gen Zs because, they are very different. And the generations that we come from and Gen Z, there is a difference in the expectations, the way things are being done by these two sets of people. So it's very important and it's very interesting to have a conversation with them to understand what exactly they expect, and then trying to see how we can make the workplace more conducive for them. So if at all we feel that Gen Z are not showing the kind of accountability and ownership they should, maybe we as an organization need to introspect as to whether we are able to engage them effectively, whether we are able to understand their expectations effectively, what kind of work do they prefer to do, what kind of work environment they prefer, what kind of style of working, style of learning they prefer. And then accordingly providing them with the right set of resources may be the first step for the organizations to take. And then, slowly and gradually we'll be able to see the results. What do you think, Deepan?
Yeah, I fully agree. Also, I want to add, that Hemant, in your question, there are two presuppositions. One presupposition is you have a certain definition or an understanding about this word accountability. And the second presupposition is that Gen Z are transactional in nature. Now, the presupposition or the definition of both these will be different for even a Gen Y versus a Gen Z. You know, and to that extent, I think both parties need to be able to walk that distance, build that bridge to understand. And as Deepti said, we had that conversation. I do interact with plenty of Gen Zers. I'm father to one, but that besides that, there are plenty of Gen Zers that I interact with. It's not that they don't want to take accountability, but what they are uh, kind of saying is, while we want to be accountability doesn't mean I'm going to be working till say 9 p.m. I'm going to be doing whatever my boss tells me. What they would like, and many of them, please don't make an absolute listing about it, but many of them is, if I'm responsible for a few things, I'll do it. Okay, now please don't micromanage. Okay,
Yeah.
now when you micromanage, then I have a problem. Okay, you don't trust me. If I'm a Gen Z, right? So somewhere it's about understanding that their paradigm about accountability is different from a Gen X or a even a Gen Y for that matter. And that's because they've grown up differently. Their house, I mean, if so many of us have Gen Zs at home, we give them all liberty, all freedom to do the way they want to work, study, whatever at home. But when they go to office, if you don't do what the boss says, then you're not responsible at all. So they're not going to take it that way, right? So that we need to really understand. Understanding Gen Zers is a difficult thing, it's a tricky thing. We just need to embrace them, spend more time with them, and yeah, some of them will be, showing a lack of ownership. But then many Gen Xers also do that, right? Train, coach, or eliminate. One of
Yeah. Absolutely. We can't attribute it to a particular generation. It's omnipresent actually across generations. So those who are accountable, they will be accountable, irrespective of the generation they come from. Very
Today, if you look around, there are, for example, there are plenty of 50 somethings who've grown to the level of senior manager DGM.
Yeah.
Right. But there are 40 plus who are CXOs.
Yeah.
Right. So they are the Gen Xers or Gen Yers who are kind of reaching the CXO position. But there are many younger lot also who have not yet reached there. Right? So it's a mix of, it's about talent, attitude, more than the generation where they come from.
True. True. I can see one more questions. How can organizations ensure their reskilling efforts are inclusive and equitable, considering diversity and inclusion? Basically, if I understand the question correctly, it says that while there is this whole lot of investment being done on reskilling, upskilling, how do organizations ensure that it is reaching across all the spheres within the organizations, across levels? So first of all, I think, it's a complete mindset shift that needs to be done. Inclusivity has to be ingrained in the mindset, and that's where I spoke about the inclusive leadership assessment also that we do in order to ensure that people do have openness to diversity and inclusion at every level. So that's one thing that we do. Once that has been ensured, then automatically, there will be efforts to enable everyone to enhance the skill sets in all sorts of people. So managers will be more open to diverse thoughts, diverse people coming from diverse backgrounds, diverse cultures, and so on. Even for that matter, these days there are managers who have to manage a team of people working remotely, people working from office, people working in a hybrid mode, and keep them all engaged at the same time. So that's a mammoth task these days, even managers and leaders have. So basically, once you have that openness to diversity in yourself, you will be able to kind of take the right set of steps towards the same. That's what I feel. And then you have all these kind of tools which basically help you first evaluate and then develop people for the right set of skills. Dipan, you have any thoughts?
No, I fully agree that one is a longer answer is that it has to start from the top, and mindset change, using the right tools. As we mentioned just a short while ago, that the tools are there, so half the job is done.
Yeah.
Right? The diagnostics part, and then there are other tools which are also available to be able to bring. But that is something at a cultural level which has to flow from the top, and all the things that you said, Deepti. But a one-line answer to that is uh, don't discriminate, and then basically you have, only this category of people will be skilled, or that category will be skilled. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Provide the reskilling or skilling efforts based on the need, the competencies, the traits, and on merit, and then you don't have a problem about not
True.
doing that.
True. We have had some very interesting client case studies where, apart from assessing the individual's inclusive leadership or openness to diversity, we have also conducted multi-rater feedbacks uh, with, their immediate stakeholders to actually understand what is the stakeholders' perception. So apart from their own self-assessment or, apart from their self-perception, we try to understand the stakeholders' perception also, and then try to sensitize these people on where they feel they are versus where their immediate stakeholders feel they are, and what are the gaps. There may be some hidden strengths also. Sometimes we feel that we are not good at certain elements, but this immediate stakeholders, our internal, external customers feel that we are good at doing those things. So in the entire framework, we also tried to sensitize them on what are some of their strengths and what are some of the blind spots that they really need to work on. So that was one of the very interesting studies that we did. There is one more question I can see: how the success could be measured while the team is working remotely without compromising trust issues. Deepan, would you like to take that up?
How success could be measured while the team is working remotely without compromising trust. Uh, well, I think this also once again goes back to how we operate. If there is a lot of subjectivity in terms of measuring success, then whether remote or otherwise, biases will creep in, right? But I think if, as an organization, if we have a robust or a system of measuring performance objectively, and then defining what success really is or means, uh, then I don't think there would be any problem in measuring the performance and therefore measuring success. And if the parameters are very objective, if the system is robust, using the right kind of tools, then no biases will creep in. And if there are no bias, or rather minimal biases, then the trust won't be an issue, right? So I think it is about making it objective, merit based, uh, you know, without any biases, but a robust system.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answers the question, or if you would like to add anything to that.
Yeah, so I think I assume that here the success being spoken about is more on the job success, but a lot of, basically when it comes to assessing potential also, a lot of our clients, we are talking about technology. There are high-end proctoring mechanisms available, which basically help you ensure that the right set of people are taking the assessment, and there is no there is no the unethical practice being followed there. So you can actually see the person taking assessments. You can have some red flags in terms of, if at all the person toggles between multiple assessment screens, or looks somewhere else, or trying to read in a book, or taking help of any other measures. So there are manual as well as technological proctoring mechanisms available these days, which help you ensure that you're getting the right kind of potential. So when you're assessing people at the time of hiring as well as for development, for the fact that the same person who's supposed to be taking the assessment is taking the assessment, and thus you have from apart from having an objective way of assessing, you are also ensuring that the same person is taking the assessment. So technology makes it easier, I guess. And on the job success, as Deepan correctly mentioned, if you have a very robust and objective system of assessing performance, I think there shouldn't be any trust issues.
And which is where, like Deepti, you also alluded to it earlier, that we all have the sensing, the entire process, which helps do the diagnosis very well. And then we get into deploying the tools right. And then, the whole chain is complete. Otherwise, it can create gaps. So I think,
True.
yeah, you got it. Right.
True.
Also, I was reflecting on some of the earlier questions then about accountability, ownership, and from the things that are many times, as organizations, we need to realize that when a certain employee, since it is about Gen Z there, but it can be about anything, many times the behavior breeds behavior. Right? If we are saying that a new employee is behaving in a certain manner, 9 out of 10 times it will be a reflection of what that person is experiencing. Yeah.
True.
I'll repeat that. Behavior breeds behavior. If a new employee, new joiner is behaving in a certain manner, whichever generation, 9 out of or 8 out of 10 times, it will be a reflection of what the person is experiencing or seeing around as examples. So I think it's about creating that culture and then
Yeah, very true.
putting the right measures, right? Demonstrating the right behavior.
Absolutely. So I think with that, we are almost done with the questions. Are there any more questions anyone has?
So what we will do, we will also send a Q&A form with the recording after the webinar. And if anyone will be having the question, they can drop the questions in the Q&A form. And we will share it with you, Deepti and Deepan, and you can answer it over there.
Sure.
Yeah. All right. So I think that's all. So thank you, Ms. Deepti and Mr. Deepan, for the wonderful session. It was truly insightful. And as we approach the end of this webinar, I express my sincere gratitude to all the attendees for being a part of this informative session. We hope you have gained valuable insights and actionable knowledge. Just remember, the learning doesn't stop here. Continue to explore, grow, and stay updated on the concepts discussed today to stay ahead in this dynamic world. And for all the attendees, I will share the feedback form in the chat box. Kindly fill it out. Yeah, it's there in the chat box. And also, we will be sharing the recording of this webinar with you all over the registered email address. And if you have any question, please feel free to contact us. Thank you for attending and have a great week ahead.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you all. Thank you for joining. Thank you, Jolisha, for putting it all together. Thank you, Deepti.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Dhruvi.
Bye-bye.